Developing larger and stronger trapezius muscles is something many people train for. The trapezius is a muscle with three primary regions, the upper, middle, and lower traps. Next to having a more aesthetically looking back, having strong trap muscles also is important for shoulder health and posture. For instance, the traps stabilize the shoulders when you move your scapula or hold a heavy weight. The traps are also used to tilt your head or shrug your shoulders. So the trapezius muscle plays a fundamental role if you want to build a strong and resilient body. And the look of having well-developed traps with a thick upper back might also interest you. So in today's video, I will discuss 5 key tips on how you can better develop your traps. At the end of this video, I will also show a practical training example that puts these tips into practice. Let's first get a clear idea of what the traps muscles actually do. As mentioned, the traps have 3 main regions, the upper, mid, and lower traps. The upper traps mostly assist in scapular elevation and upward rotation. They also stabilize the scapula when you hold a weight. The mid fibers of the traps run more in the middle of the back, so they are involved more when you perform row variations in which you retract the scapula. While the lower trap muscle fibers run diagonally down, so the lower trap muscle fibers are more involved with scapular depression in which you move your shoulders down. The low trap fibers also assist in thoracic extension. Having a basic understanding of the different traps functions is important because it helps us understand that training your traps is a lot more than just doing some shrugging exercises. In fact, because many people are focused on just training the shrugging movement to build larger upper traps, you will often find that people have more developed upper traps than mid and lower traps. This can result in your upper traps becoming too dominant, and that then contributes to a more forward hinging posture. To prevent imbalances in your traps development, we will look into training all 3 heads of the traps in a balanced way. Let's start from the top and discuss upper traps training, and then later on in the video, we will move into the fundamental low and mid traps training as well. By the way, it's also worth mentioning that all 3 heads of the traps work together on the movements that I'll discuss. But based on what exercises you select, we can place more emphasis on certain regions of the traps. And the first tip for traps training is to maintain a wider grip whenever you do barbell shrugs. Because the upper trap muscle fibers assist in elevating your scapula, shrugs are often used when upper trap development is the goal. But keeping your arms at your side whenever you do barbell shrugs won't allow for optimal upper trap stimulation to occur. If we look at your trap's anatomy, your upper trap muscle fibers move diagonally up. So maintaining a wider grip helps you better align the resistance of the weight with your upper trap muscle fibers. This helps explain why research suggests that the upper traps are more active when you use a wider grip on shrugs. We want to raise the arms to the side by roughly 30 degrees to get the desired training effect. The second trap training tip is to use horizontal row variations in which you let your scapula move freely. The mid fibers of your traps are heavily involved with row variations in which you have to retract the shoulder blades. The mid fibers of your traps run along the mid upper back. So doing row variations with a wider elbow positioning allows you to effectively align the resistance with these muscle fibers. Think about performing wide grip barbell rows, wide grip cable rows, or even dumbbell rows with a wide elbow positioning. But it's key that you let your scapula move freely while performing these row variations because the mid traps mostly assist in the retraction portion of a row. So if you lock your scapula while doing row variations, the mid traps will not get challenged effectively. We want to actively protract and retract the shoulder blades when you perform row variations. The third traps training tip is related to the second one, and that is doing pull-down variations in which you also let your scapula move freely. The lower traps muscle fibers assist in scapular depression and thoracic extension. We can train both of these actions well with pull-down and pull-up variations if we let the shoulder blades run their natural course. As you pull in a vertical fashion, your shoulder blades retract and depress by moving downward. This helps with stimulating the lower traps. We also want to extend your upper back in a subtle way while pulling the weight down, so we can train thoracic extension and further challenge the mid-trap muscles. Like with rows, if we lock the scapula while doing pull-down variations, we will not get the full training benefits for the traps. So whenever you do pull exercises, keep in mind that we want the scapula to run its natural course to effectively stimulate your traps muscles. When you train these rows and pull downs, more muscles than of course just your traps will be trained. For instance, the biceps, lats, rear delts, rhomboids will also get challenged. But that's the good thing about incorporating compound movements in your routine. You can work on training several muscle groups at the same time. Now that we have looked into the fundamental tips about training your upper, mid, and lower traps, let's look into some of the more detailed tips when it comes to traps training. So the fourth tip of training your traps is to also incorporate exercises that involve you holding a heavy weight. The trapezius muscle stabilizes your shoulders and neck. When you hold a heavy weight, the trapezius muscle has to act and stabilize. This is why people that have a day job that involves them holding a heavy weight, or individuals that can do heavy deadlifts, typically have well-developed traps. If you have a deadlift variation in your training program, then you will have this tip typically covered just fine. But if you want to work on further developing your traps muscles, then it is also worth looking into incorporating an exercise like farmer's walks, in which you have to hold a heavy weight. Both your traps and grip strength will be challenged more. The fifth training tip is about an exercise that is, in my opinion, underutilized for upper traps training, and that is doing dumbbell butterfly side raises. We know that the upper trap muscle fibers run diagonally up and are highly active in upward rotation of the scapula. Well, that's exactly what you train with the butterfly side raise. When you raise your arms over your head, the upper trapezius muscle starts taking over the movement, and you train a similar movement pattern as with wide grip shrugs. Because this is a side raise variation, your side deltoids will also get challenged, but that's okay. Muscles are designed to work together and coordinate movement. So if you don't mind getting some extra volume for your side delts while also strengthening the upper traps, training butterfly side raises is worth considering. Also, face pulls are worth considering for traps training, since these train upward rotation of the scapula too. Then you also get some bonus rear deltoid and rotator cuff training done. Now, I know that at the start of the video I mentioned that I have 5 training tips for the traps, but I have an extra bonus tip that I would like to discuss that is specifically related to neck training. Because oftentimes when individuals want to develop their traps, they also want a thicker neck. While training the upper traps region will also develop the area around your neck, the neck also has specific muscles that we can target. It may look odd because, as you can see, I look like a pinwing that is having a seizure while doing the neck exercises, but it is effective. In one study, it was found that doing the basic compound movements like rows, squats, deadlifts was not effective for increasing the size of your actual neck muscles. The trap muscles most likely developed just fine, but the neck muscles did not. Only when 3 additional sets of neck extensions were performed 3 times per week, neck muscle growth occurred. So if you want to build a thicker neck, training your neck muscles with specific neck extensions and flexion is worth considering as well. Now that we have covered all of the training tips, let's put it all together into one practical traps-focused training example. As you can see, we have a shrug variation for the upper traps, a wide grip row for the mid traps, and a pull down for the lower traps. We also have an exercise that involves holding a heavy weight and butterfly side raises. If you want, you can add some focused neck training at the end of each session, but it's optional depending on your goals. And that was all for today's video. I hope you now have a better understanding of how you can go about effective traps training. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Also, if you found this video helpful, then definitely leave me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video.